2 Kings chapter 5. So we're continuing on our lesson series with marriage, and the theme is, are we there yet? And so last couple weeks we talked about the direction that we're going in our marriages and make sure that it is following God's plan and God's direction for marriage. This week we're going to talk about expectations and how often our expectations are not met sometimes or unrealistic. And how expectations that aren't met or unrealistic expectations that aren't fulfilled can lead to issues within our relationship and lead to issues in our marriage. And it's a reality. It's a thing that happens because we're all humans, and we all enter marriage with certain expectations, certain things you expect to be the way that you think they should be, based on a lot of different things. Sometimes those expectations are exactly what you expect. Sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they end up being different, and sometimes they're given something you never would have thought of or even considered with your relationship with your husband and or wife. And so we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to tell you, I had some photos, and I'm having a terrible time with technology this last month. So I was thinking about just going back to paper and pencils and just resetting everything. But I had a Keynote, and I saved it, but it didn't save. I have it duplicated last week, so, whatever. I'm not mad. I'm fine. I'm not upset about it. But I had some photos. So Lisa and I got married 23 years ago this coming December. And so we got married in December. I was still in Bible college. I had like a year left to finish up. But it was either get married in December or wait till the following summer. So we got married over Christmas break. And for our honeymoon, we went to Jamaica. Now, again, South Dakota boy, from South Dakota. I was in school in Indiana, but I've been to Nebraska and Minnesota, but that was like my travel experience, right? And here I am now, a husband for the first time, and I'm like, yeah, let's go to Jamaica. That would be awesome. And Jamaica's beautiful. See pictures of Jamaica. It's a tropical island, right? In the Caribbean, it's amazing. Crystal water, or that turquoise blue water, just beautiful. I'm like, yes, I'm going to take my brand new wife to Jamaica. It's going to be amazing. And again, we're talking about expectations, right? And expectations you have for when you go on things. And so we went on this trip to Jamaica, and we left from Ohio, where she lived at the time, in December 21st. So in Ohio, it's cold, right? And snowy. I mean, it was freezing cold. And so we are dressed for winter. And again, we're stupid kids, okay? So we have our sweaters and our, long sleeve shirts. And that's what we wear to the airports, right, the day we leave. And we arrive in Jamaica, and it's no longer, 10 degrees. It is 80, 90 degrees. And it's one of those ones where you go off the airplane right onto the tarmac, walk into the, barely the hub for an airport. Again, it's Jamaica. And we're just like, well, this was a bad mistake. We are sweating profusely, and we're just agitated, we're tired, and all those things. And then we have to get on a bus to the resort. It's open on the sides, and they drive on the left, and the roads are super narrow. And I'm pretty sure I have nail marks still from where Lisa was gripping my arm out of fear and terror as this gentleman drove like a maniac through these narrow streets. I'm pretty sure we killed at least one goat while we were doing that, because there were goats and chickens everywhere. I mean, it's not a third world country. I realize that. But to me, I'm like, where are we? What have I done? Right? And so we're terrified. We get to the resort, which is an all-inclusive place, which I did intentionally. We get there. They get to our room, and our room's beautiful. Really big room. We could see the ocean from where we're at. We're just like, okay, this is good. We're never leaving. Never. We're staying here. The entire time we're here, we're never leaving. But I had planned to go to Dunn's River Falls, which is a waterfall that you can walk up, and they take tourists, and you can walk up the fall. It's beautiful. It's vegetation everywhere. I had a wonderful photo. Just imagine it in your mind. Lush green photo, water coming down, and it's not a giant waterfall. It's a bunch of small steps And so they take you up this as it's one of the tourist attractions. You walk up it. And so there are buses everywhere, right? So we get on our bus from our place where our resort we're staying. They take us there, and there's a few other couples with us. And we get off, and we get there, and we're like, okay, you have a wristband that tells, so really it's so that the people that live there know where you're staying. So we have like this yellow wristband on. It's for our all-inclusive part. We get there, it's all paid for, already took care of all that when we get there. So we kind of check in, they get you in group, and they take you up the falls. Well, as soon as we get there, there's a local there that's like, you guys want me to take pictures? You want us to take pictures of you? We're like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And again, this is the early 2000s, so I have a disposable camera. That is what I have, the right click, that one of those. And I'm like, yeah, that would be awesome. So I give him my camera, and he's like, I'll take pictures as we go. I never see him again, like to the very, very end of the whole thing. Like he's doing the same thing to a bunch of other people. He never takes one photo of us. He just kind of goes off and starts mingling, and then I lose him. I don't know where he goes. That's the very beginning of this wonderful tourist attraction. So we go up this falls, and it is really nice. It was beautiful, a lot of good memories. I do remember I had to keep grabbing this other lady's arm to pull her up, and she was not too pleased with that. Again, we've been married for a day or two, and this woman, I don't know where her husband was, but she had hard times, so for some reason I'm there dragging her along, and it was really awkward. But we spent time, we go through all this, we get down to the bottom of the falls, we get all the way down to the bottom, and I'm like, that dude left without, we never got any pictures. And all of a sudden I see him, right? Because you get down there, it's kind of like when you get done with an amusement park ride, there's stalls everywhere and gift shops and things like that. But it's way bigger than any amusement park ride. And it's just open air, a bunch of stalls, and I see the guy, I'm like, where's my camera? I was like, you ran off with my camera. And he's like, oh, sorry. And so he pulls out, he's like, here you go. And he goes like this. I was like, get out of here. You don't give me any pictures. Give me my camera. I'm giving you a tip. And so he and I take my camera. I'm like, I cannot believe this. So I'm a little perturbed and frustrated because I didn't get any pictures of this thing. And to this day, we have no pictures of that stupid waterfall that was and that was awesome. We have no pictures of it. So we're walking towards our bus, going through all these stalls, and some guy comes out. And I can't do a Jamaican accent well, so I won't try because I'll just embarrass myself. But you know what a Jamaican accent sounds like, right? And so he comes out, he's like, oh, you guys are staying at this resort. We're like, yeah. He's like, oh, what's your names? And so I tell him my name, tell her name. He's like, why are you here? He's like, well, we just got married a couple days. Oh, what day did you get married on? We're like, oh, the 21st. He's like, that's awesome. And he pulls out these things, and he starts carving our names into them. And if you look in the back, it says Irie, right, which no problem, Irie. And then Lisa, 12/21/02, and then Chad, 12/21/02. And he just starts carving our names. Ask our names, when we got married, just starts carving them in. I'm like, oh, he's like, these are for you. I'm like, oh, cool, thanks. So I grab him. He's like, that's whatever, 50-something. I'm like, oh, I have no money. We came to the falls. It's like going to the pool. Yeah, I don't have a wallet on me. I didn't bring it with me because I didn't want to get it wet. I have no cash. He's like, oh, no. I was like, no, that's okay. I didn't ask you to do this. He just started doing it. He's trying to swindle us, right? And he hands it to me. He's like, well, you're staying at such and such resort, right? I'm like, yeah. That's okay. Just leave the money at the front desk. I come by there all the time. I'll just pick it up. I was like, okay, sure. I can do that. No problem. I'm like, man, can't believe that guy just took me from me. I would not have done that. I don't want idols in my house. But now I have idols in my house for the last 23 years, and we're never getting rid of them. So he's like, yeah, just leave the money there. I think we had like three days left. I never left any money for the guy. Not a single penny. And so we're like, every time we go down to the main lobby, we're like, where's that guy around? Okay, he's not around. Run, get our coffee or whatever, back to the room. I never left him a dime, so I stole these from Jamaica. It's amazing. It's a great story. But not, they're cool. It's a good memory, which is actually a bad memory. But now, 20 years later, it's funny, right? And it's like, okay, man, we were naive. We had to learn a lot of things about travel. And there were some frustrations with each other. I mean, I'm sure she was terrified and going, what have I got myself into? This man is taking me somewhere, and he clearly is not comfortable where he is. Which, wise, when your husband's not comfortable and with things and fearful a little, that really gets you too, right? And there's some fear there. It's not like I went to Rome, and I don't even want to know. You can tell me your stories later, because I'm sure you have some too. But it created some tension, even within us, and expectations that she may have had with how this marriage was going to go, and this guy was going to take care of her, and failed in some of those expectations. And some expectations we had for our trip that did not end up being at all what we thought they would be. The goats and chickens right away or just kind of threw the whole thing off. Immediately we got off the airplane. So we build those expectations, and we all do that. We all have those expectations that we build within our marriage, and we expect our marriage to be. And sometimes the mental images that creates can vary big difference from what reality ends up becoming. And sometimes the expectations and realities can be humorous, right, in hindsight. But sometimes the expectations and misunderstandings can become an ongoing stream of disappointment, right? You can get to a point where you're always disappointed, and the expectations always feel like they aren't met, or exactly what you hoped it could be, or what you thought it would be. And it could be an ongoing thing that becomes part of marriage, that becomes part of your relationship. And a lot of marital disappointment comes from unrealistic and oftentimes unspoken expectations that spouses have for each other, or for the life they thought they would have, or for the way the home would be worked and how the responsibilities would be for one another. We come to our marriages with more expectations than we probably even realize. Things that we've built up in our minds that we thought it would be or could be. They could be cultural, familial, just how your family had done it, relationships that you had in the past. And I mean, in the day and age we live now, even social media and TV shows and movies and reality shows where we think things look like the way it should be. And so when we get there and we don't even know what our expectations are, so we can't discuss them per se beforehand, but we get to our marriage and we just assume that everybody thinks the way I think, even my new spouse, and we realize that's not always the case, and often not the case, that we don't think the same way or see things in the same way. So those expectations can lead to disappointments. And obviously not all expectations in marriage are wrong, right? Not everything to have an expectation is a bad thing. Marriage is built on the expectation that your spouse will honor the vows that we talked about last week, that you will love and care for each other unconditionally, right? And that you will both follow through on promises that you make to each other, right? That you will care and build a home, and that you will take care of one another. Those expectations make sense. Those expectations are legitimate, and we should have those expectations for each other. The expectations that cause issues are the ones that are built on a spirit of pride. And I know, yep, that means I am calling us all prideful. If you're like, that's not me, wrong. And the issues of the expectations of self-thought, right? Things that are focused on what I expect in me. Often, again, they're unspoken and sometimes even unidentified by our own expectations. We don't even realize we have them until the moment comes up that something isn't what we thought it would be. But if we don't recognize those expectations, they will and can lead to bitterness, right, towards our spouses because of they're not living up to them, or it's not what we thought it would be. And if they aren't dealt with, we can have some serious issues and some complications and some strife that we don't want. We see unmet expectations throughout Scripture. In Psalm 73, if you read Psalm 73, Asaph almost lost his faith because of the expectations he had of what God would do to the wicked, and how he saw people that were living wicked lives being prosperous and successful while he was over here living for God and struggling. And he almost lost his faith in God because of his expectations of how wicked people, in his eyes, should be taken care of and weren't. Rachel had expectations with Jacob and children. And when she didn't get children for a while, right, God didn't give her children, she became upset at who? Jacob. Right? She had expectations how their marriage would be. It was not that way, and so it caused strife within that marriage. And here, even Jesus talks about, he gave a parable about the workers that went out to the field for a certain wage. And then 6 hours later, another group of workers came in and got the same amount of wage. And a few hours later, even more workers came in with the same wages. And how the first group of workers had expectations and didn't think it's fair that everyone got paid the same. Right? Expectations for how we should be treated and how they're unmet, and some bitterness and anger that comes from them. And then here in 2 Kings chapter 5, we have Naaman. So we're going to read just a couple verses, chapter 5, verse number 10. The Bible says, Elisha sent a messenger unto him, Naaman, saying, and remember, Naaman has say it again. Leprosy. Man, the word escaped my brain. Leprosy. So Naaman has leprosy. Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. And so Naaman says, but Naaman was wroth and went away and said, and this is key phrase, behold, I thought. So he has expectations, right? He has some expectations of what the prophet would do. Behold, I thought he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and strike his hand over the place and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Parf, that river, of Damascus better than the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. So Naaman has expectations of how he thinks he should be healed. He believed that Elisha could do it, but he thought he should do it in a certain way. And when those expectations weren't met, he was so mad he just leaves. He just walks away. He's like, forget this. He stays leprous. He doesn't do what Elisha says, and he's mad, and he leaves. He has expectations were not met. And so he walks away. And the comment there, or the part is, behold, I thought, but I thought it would be this way, but it wasn't that way. And we can have those types of but I thought statements and thoughts in our marriages, right? I thought marriage would make me happy, right? You could go and I know we have different levels of years of marriage. We have newlyweds less than a year. We have 3 to 5 years. We have some that are over 20, right? And we have a lot of varying number of years married. But you could have gone into marriage saying, I thought marriage would make me happy. That it would be this, Prince Charming and Cinderella type of relationship that the birds would sing every time you'd see each other. And, it'd just be a choir in the background. And he is always perfect. She's always perfect, right? And it doesn't work that way, right? And that's not how marriage is. But we could have those expectations going in, thinking the perfect spouse is the answer for unhappiness. But then you realize after a few days, there is no perfect spouse, right? None of us are perfect. We all miss the mark on that area. And so sometimes you begin there and you think, well, since they aren't perfect, they aren't meeting my expectations, you struggle. You struggle within that marriage, right? And the problem with that is scripturally we know no person can be the source of your happiness. No human being, not even your spouse. Your wife, your husband, it cannot be the source of your happiness. They cannot be the source of your security. They cannot be the source of everything that you rest everything on. And if that isn't what it needs to be for you, you fall apart. That's an unbiblical way to live. The only person that can give you that is Christ. He's the only one that can bring that happiness, that stability. The expectations with him were never unmet. Right? He always fulfills who he says he's going to be. So if you went into marriage thinking this relationship is going to make me happy and fulfilled, and you find out, wait, they're not perfect, and actually I get mad sometimes, and I get hurt sometimes by this person that's supposed to make me happy. I'm hurt by them, and we hurt each other. Right? We're human beings. We do things that hurt our spouses. We say things. We act in ways that bring hurt and pain. And if you had an expectations that marriage would make you happy, that could be dashed really quickly, and you can be very unhappy in marriage, and that whole relationship can just be a problem through the whole time. And that's where you run into spouses that are just constantly unhappy and bitter and angry, and it's just like, why would anyone want to get married if that's the result? But that's them putting their stock of expectations of happiness in a person. And we can't do that. We have to realize that's not where that goes. We could have thought, but I thought my spouse would meet all my needs. Right? Focusing on your needs only ruins a marriage. I'll say it again. Focusing on your needs can only ruin a marriage. And we'll get to that a little bit later too. Every husband and wife has needs. There's no doubt about it. Ephesians 5 speaks to those needs. The command to us is to meet others' needs, not focus on ours. Right? That's God's command to us, is that we meet each other's needs, not just focus on our needs. But if we thought our spouse would take care of our needs and that was our expectations, that's an unmet expectation, even an unrealistic one. We could think but I thought he or she would change after we get married. I thought this thing I had a problem with, or the thing that I was working on before we got married, I thought they would change. I thought they would get better at that. I thought they would stop this. This is unreasonable and unfair. Right? Marriage is not a magical event that transforms a person. Now, it does change you. There's no doubt about it, but it doesn't change who you are. You are who you are. Now you're just married who you are. Now, can you become different? Sure, you can work on yourself. But if you go in expecting your spouse to be different because you're married, that's unreasonable. It's an unreasonable expectation. After marriage, your job is to work to understand the person you married, to love them, to accept them. That is the job within the marriage, is to now not make them be different or work on them to change them, but to work on you to love them and to understand them. Now, all this is to pause. None of this excuses sin, right? None of this says, well, I'm just going to drink because that's who I am. I have these problems. And the husband would be like, well, I thought she would change and stop drinking when we got married. Well, no, you shouldn't expect me to change. I'm not saying that. I'm sin is sin. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about sin in that way, but I am saying our personality traits and even some things that we do that are wrong. We could be angry. We can be short-tempered. We can be selfish and expect them to change. I'm not saying accept the sinful habits of people, but I'm saying if you expect your spouse to be different just because you're married, the expectations there were misplaced. Right? Now, we should work on it ourselves to become more like Christ. That means if you have a problem with drinking, you should stop. If you have a problem with cussing, you should stop. If you have a problem with being angry, you should work on that. Right? These are things that we should work on ourselves. But going into that marriage, if you expect it to change because of marriage, expectations are not going to be met in that way. Another thing we could say, but I thought I found the right one, marriage would be easy. Again, it doesn't really matter how long you've been married. That's not true. Right? If that expectation going in, you thought marriage was going to be easy, no, that's any relationship we have with people takes effort. And a good marriage is no different. A good marriage takes effort from the parties. Passionate spouses think about their spouse often and invest in that relationship. If you want it to be easy, if you want it to be good, not easy, if you want you have a good marriage, you invest in each other. You think about your spouse, you invest time with them. And we all could do better at that. We all can do better at investing in our spouse more. That is how you build a good marriage. But if you went in thinking, this is going to be easy because I found Mr. Right or Mrs. Right, no, it's not going to be easy. But you can make it better by investing more in each other. So, and there's a lot of different other expectations where you could say, but I thought it would be this way. And you can look at your marriage and think, well, do I have any of those thoughts currently in my marriage? If she would just do this, then it would be better. If he would just do this or stop this, if it was just like this, then things would be. If he or she would fill in the blank, how would you fill in that blank with your marriage right now? And if you go get the gist of where we're going and the expectations we have, if we're thinking about if he or she would just, then we would be better, then this would be better, then our focus is wrong. Our expectations are on the wrong spot. They're going to be unfulfilled. You might get a little bit of fulfillment here and there, but it's as far as expectations go. But overall, if that's the focus, if he or she would be or would do, your expectations are going to be unmet. And it's going to bring disappointment and frustration, even bitterness. So really what we need to focus on instead, and the whole travel theme that we're doing is a downhill thought this time. Our flesh, which is the sinful part of us, right? Our flesh says to overcome unfulfilled expectations, we need our spouse to change and fulfill our desires, right? That's what our flesh says. But Scripture tells us another way to fulfill those expectations. It says that I need to change me. Go to Philippians chapter 2. We'll probably split this into 2 lessons as well, because I'm not going to push through it, but we'll get as far as we can. Philippians chapter 2. We'll start at verse number 5. And it's a very familiar passage. You probably all could at least quote some of it. Philippians 2, verse 5 says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus." Right? So we know where we're going. "Who, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, took upon him the form of a servant." There's the key word. "And was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even the death of the cross." So if I'm going to, rather than focus on wanting my spouse to fulfill my desires and my needs and change for me, the focus is to be like Christ and to change me into his image and to change my mind into his mind, who is the one that was humble and served. And that is, if we want our expectations to be met and fulfilled, we got to stop worrying about them meeting me and me instead meeting their expectations. We need Christ's mind to do that. Go back to this command here to have the mind of Christ predicates on verses 3 and 4. So go to verses number 3 and 4. Verse 3 says, "Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others." If we applied those 2 verses to our marriage, do you think that might change our marriage completely? And that's the thought process there, right? Is that if we're going to be like Christ and have the same mind as Christ and act the way that he acted, verses 3 and 4 need to be our attitudes towards each other within our marriage. Obviously, this applies to everybody, and that's what is being said here. But if you applied that to your marriage, to not do anything through strife, and be lowly in mind, think about each other rather than themselves, that would transform your expectations, right, within your marriage, and that would transform your spouse's expectations of you. And you could work in that manner instead of worrying about you being fulfilled. You worry about them being fulfilled. So in order to do that, in order to change the way you view your expectations, in order to change your mind and being that way, because this is a struggle. To behave the way verses 3 and 4 are, it takes work and effort. Because you could do that. After a sermon or a lesson, you could be like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be less selfish. I'm going to be more humble. I'm going to look at my spouse instead of me. And for a day, maybe 2, you'll be good. And then life will come back and normalcy will happen. And then you'll be right back to me and my ways and my selfishness. Like you don't even have to do it on purpose. It's just going to happen. So it requires us to constantly take steps to make sure that that's the position that we're viewing our marriage from. Rather than having expectations of him or her, we now give ourselves expectations of how we should act to be like Christ, to fulfill the expectations he or she has. And that is the goal. So I'm going to stop here because we're going to get into a couple steps on how to go through those, and there's no reason to begin if I'll just have to rehearse it next week again, and we'll just do it twice, which maybe is good. But the whole idea, I guess, with the premise of this lesson today is understanding we all have expectations. We do. And even doesn't matter how long you've been married, we have expectations of each other. And if we're honest with ourselves, our spouses fail our expectations. They fail to meet them. So sometimes a lot. And we fail to meet our spouse's expectations because oftentimes it's not because we're out trying to make our marriage miserable. It's not like we're trying to, cut ourselves off at the knees. That's not the goal. No, anyone would have within their marriage. We're just humans and we're selfish. And if we're not on top of ourselves to not be that way, that's our default, is to be selfish. And so it takes effort from us to have a marriage that God wants us to have and to esteem each other. We want to be happy, right? We all want to be happy within our marriages. We all want to make sure our spouse's expectations are met. None of us are happy about the fact that we left our spouse's expectations unfulfilled, even if they're unreasonable, right? And not perfect. We're not Prince Charmings, right? It just doesn't happen. We know that. And that's humanity. Those things are not realistic, but there are ways that we can treat each other and behave around each other that does fulfill happiness and bring happiness within that relationship. And that's what we want to accomplish. And again, that'll require us to do some things in our attitudes and our view of marriage. So we'll get into that next week. We'll